Hello. In this video I want to describe the Austrian invasion of Serbia in 1914. This is one of a number of videos I'm making on World War I. Although quickly overshadowed by the conflicts on other fronts, the Austro-Hungarian assault on Serbia was the first campaign of World War I. The attack began on the 29th of July with the bombardment of Belgrade, the Serb capital, conveniently located just across the Danube from Habsburg territory. This was essentially a symbolic gesture, however. To defeat Serbia, the Austrians would have to invade and occupy the country. This was the start of their problems. In purely military terms, it would have been more sensible for the Austrians to deploy most of their troops in Galicia to face the Russians and to adopt a defensive posture against Serbia, with a smaller number of troops holding the border. Serbia had little real chance of successfully attacking Habsburg territory, and Russia was a massive and potent threat. Politically, however, this was not possible. Having effectively challenged Serbia to a duel, the loss of prestige, if they did not deal with the Serbs, would have been an unbearable affront to the Habsburg sense of their own honor and dignity, as well as ending any influence that they hoped to exert in the Balkans. This meant that the Habsburgs deliberately decided to fight a two-front war. In reality, however, to fight simultaneously against both Serbia and Russia was beyond their ability, unless they had heavy support from Germany, and Germany was initially preoccupied with its own campaigns. By deciding to fight a two-front war, the Habsburgs may have doomed themselves to failure right from the start, but their plight was made worse by massive errors of judgment by their military chiefs, notably Conrad, as to the advanced planning and logistics that were required for what they were trying to do. Given that they had deliberately provoked this particular struggle, the Habsburgs' conduct of their war was remarkably inept. As I will note in another video, Franz Conrad von Hotzendorf, the chief of the Austro-Hungarian Army's General Staff in 1914, had been one of the major voices in Vienna, repeatedly calling for war against Serbia. Yet in the reality of conflict, he proved himself to be both poorly organized and indecisive. Conrad also seriously underestimated the resilience of the Serbs. Like others in the Habsburg leadership, he saw Serbia as a small, ineffectual, and upstart neighbor that needed to be taught a lesson by Austria-Hungary as one of the great and mighty powers. Certainly, Serbia was tiny compared to the Habsburg Empire, and had a total population of a mere 5 million people, against some 69 million for Austria-Hungary. The Habsburg army was also much larger, outnumbering the Serbs by at least 3-1 before the war. Austria-Hungary was also much richer, and as everyone knew, the Serbs were exhausted from the recent Balkan wars. At the same time, in the summer of 1914, the Habsburgs had to divide their forces between two widely separated fronts, so that in their invasion of Serbia they were outnumbered by the Serb army arrayed against them, about 350,000 Serbs to 290,000 Habsburg forces. And although the Serbs lacked sufficient weapons to arm all their men, the core of the army were tough, battle-hardened veterans of the Balkan Wars. By contrast, the Austro-Hungarian men were untested in battle, the empire not having fought a war since the disastrous conflict against Prussia in 1866. Moreover, the morale of the Austro-Hungarian forces and their commitment to the Habsburg cause was uncertain, with officers often mistrusting the men of the national minorities, particularly the Slavs. For their part, even the newest Serbian recruits could be imbued with a sense of nationalistic fervor in defense of their families and homeland. The Serbs also had the advantage of having as their commander Radomir Putnik, a man of proven ability and considerable resilience and resourcefulness. Overall direction of the 1914 Habsburg campaign against Serbia was given to Oskar Potierak, the governor of Bosnia, who had been with Franz Ferdinand at the time of the assassination and had in fact been in charge of ensuring his security. Conrad had divided his armies into 3 separate forces, one each for the Galician and Serbian fronts, with a third in reserve. Originally he assigned the reserve force to support Poturac in the attack on Serbia, but subsequently moved it north to Galicia after the Serbian struggle had commenced, ensuring that it played little role in the actual campaign. Rather than advance directly on Belgrade, which was easily accessible from Hungarian territory, Poturac decided to mount his main thrust from the west, from Austrian Bosnia. This would entail a lengthy and difficult approach across the mountains and the upper Drina River to try and envelop the Serbs, whilst a second force held the Danube frontier, keeping the Serbs pinned in the north to protect their capital. The Habsburg invasion from the west began on the 12th of August, but after heavy fighting in the highlands along the border, the Austro-Hungarian forces were pushed back into Bosnia by late August. In early September, the Serbs crossed into the Serb-populated area of Bosnia, later besieging Sarajevo. They also cut the railway line from Hungary to Romania. A war of attrition followed, and the Serbs became increasingly short of ammunition and other supplies, and their army was greatly reduced by death, disease, and desertion. The better supplied Austro-Hungarian attacks, by contrast, were increasingly successful, and in early December Belgrade itself was finally taken, the Serbian government relocating to the town of Niš in the south. When resupplied with ammunition by the French, via the Greek port of Thessaloniki, the Serbs rallied quickly, however, routing the Habsburg forces in a major battle on the 5th to 8th December, with whole Austrian units abandoning their equipment and surrendering. With King Peter and his sons at their head, the Serbian army reoccupied Belgrade on the 15th of December. All Austro-Hungarian forces were expelled from the country by year's end, and at that time Serbia was the only victor amongst the Allied powers. This victory had been won at great cost. Serb losses, including men lost to disease, were major, around 70,000 men, including 15,000 prisoners of war. The Serbs had also lost 42 guns. The Habsburg forces had suffered even greater losses. By mid-December, Austro-Hungary had lost around 227,000 men, including prisoners of war, on the Serbian front. They'd also lost 179 guns. It was not just a disaster for the Habsburg Empire, but a massive humiliation. Tiny Serbia had stood up to a powerful bully and won. Given that the Habsburgs also had lost against the Russians, Conrad admitted that if Franz Ferdinand had still been alive, then he would probably have been shot for incompetence. As it was, he survived, and General Poturac took the blame for the Serbian fiasco and was dismissed.